My friend prefaced his next statement by saying, "This might be imposter syndrome, but," and I cut him off there, not letting him finish that full statement because it was, in fact, imposter syndrome. He was a successful business owner running a successful business that just happened to be dealing with a difficult period. I told him it was, in fact, imposter syndrome and that what he was going through is very common for his business type and, in fact, for most businesses. But the key here to what we need to talk about on the podcast today is it's not enough to tell people that they're not an imposter. You have to explain why they're not an imposter. Let's talk about it on the podcast today. It's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means. The Saturday Morning Hustle podcast. And today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome, but I'm not explaining it to you. You know what imposter syndrome is. I'm going to explain, elaborate on that story I started with, and then give you all of the ways that you can push back, that you can let anyone who is going through imposter syndrome know it's not, probably not, may not be, and then help them get over that by giving them examples and explaining the logic behind the statement, "That's not imposter syndrome. You're really good at what you do." Back to the original story. I'm in a conversation with a friend of mine who also happens to be a client who is going through a phase in his business with some difficulties that are very temporary. He's going through it right now, having a hard time trying to manage things. One of the reasons he's having a conversation with me is he needs to address specific things. He needs to make things happen. He needs to make sure that the temporary situation he's in, the difficulty he's handling, the valley that he's currently in is just that, a valley, that he can come back out of it and lead his company to a peak, to better times, to more efficiency, to the better side of business. This is a part of business. Businesses have ebb and flow. They have ups and downs. They have peaks and valleys. Every single business, everywhere, have these things. Every business owner goes through these things. It doesn't indicate in any way whether they're a good business owner, a good leader, a good manager, smart at business, smart in general. None of that is an indication if your company is struggling with any aspect of business at any point in time. We all go through it. This is one of the reasons that in this particular case, this individual is not going through imposter syndrome. It wasn't, "You're not a good business leader." He was a good business leader. He is a good business leader, will continue to be a good business leader. And in fact, that's almost proven, not completely, but by the fact that he had reached out to someone like myself to help him work through the process. Good business leaders collaborate. They bring in outside voices. They listen to input from others. So that in of itself is almost proof. But again, you can't just say to someone, whether they are overtly saying out loud, "This is imposter syndrome," the way this individual did. That typically doesn't happen, but typically you see people with behavior or lack of behavior. They're doing things or they're not doing things they should. And the reason that they've decided to do or not do those things or react the way they are reacting is imposter syndrome. They're going through it themselves. You can't just say it's not imposter syndrome. You can't just say you are good enough. You are smart enough. You are capable enough. You have the experience. You have the knowledge. You know what to do. You can't just say that to them, and you definitely can't just say that to yourself. Now, this is the hard part, folks. It's easy to have this conversation with someone else out loud to say, "Hey, here are the reasons that what you're going through right now is imposter syndrome," but standard operating business decision-making processes, and that the valley you're in is not permanent but temporary. Easy to say those things. It's harder to get people to believe it, and it's very hard for us to say that to ourselves and believe it ourselves when we're having that conversation in our own head. But you can accomplish it, you can achieve it, and you can completely and totally convince yourself or anyone else that you're having a conversation with that, in fact, it is imposter syndrome, that you are capable of handling this, that everyone does go through this, that it's very common, and that you are capable enough to find your way through it. You can do that with examples, with tactile information, evidence that you or the person you're having a conversation with are simply going through what happens on a regular basis, and that they're not an imposter, but they are someone who's simply caught up in it. They're too close to see it. The best way, the fastest way, the easiest way to dispel that imposter myth is distinct examples. In this case, I told the person who just declared themselves amidst imposter syndrome that their business has been successful since the day they opened. That even though the situation isn't exactly what they want it to be now, they have a plan, they have a vision, they have taken the steps necessary in order to get them through that process and on to the other side. I gave them examples, again, of successful things they have done as a leader of the business, even including the fact that they were having a conversation with me, that they'd reached out to outside influence and was willing, open-minded, etc., to take that input and utilize it for change, to move forward in a better way. Because that's the mistake that imposters make. People who are bad at business are the people who won't listen to outside influence, who won't share ideas, who take the my way or the highway because I'm the boss attitude, etc. People who refuse to change, to grow, to take input from others are bad leaders. They're bad business people. They're not good at what they do. And if they claim they are, when they're closed-minded in that way, they are in fact being an imposter. My way or the highway, because I said so, that's how we've always done it. These are things that poor leaders do. Good leaders do not focus on those things. They don't focus on receiving the credit or needing to be 100% iron fist in charge of an organization. Good business leaders are adaptable. Good business leaders understand that being successful in business is management of change and continual growth. They also understand that just because something doesn't work out as expected or works out negative or seems to be a problem or a challenge or a roadblock or a failure, however you want to discuss it, whatever term you want to put on it, good business leaders understand that is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow, to change, to adapt your process, to adapt your systems, to adapt your people, to adapt yourself to a 2023 version or a 2024 version if you need it already, not the 2022 version, not the 2020 version, not the 2000 version, and my God, not the 1985 version of your business, of yourself as a business leader, etc. Business and being successful is a continual management of change. That change is internal and external. It's you as the business leader, and it's all the people involved. It's the processes, the systems, it's the physical location, it's the virtual tools, it's all of that. If you're an imposter, you refuse to accept those things and think that you can change and be successful and make things happen with the sheer will of your might. That is an iron fist. Sometimes people put that iron fist in a velvet glove. They try to disguise it. At the end of the day, those are imposters. If you or a person you're talking to has been open-minded, has been flexible, who understands that the negative aspects of their business or whatever they're pursuing or the thing that's limiting them from being successful are opportunities to change, to adapt, to adjust, to grow in a way that gets them to the success they're creating, to better situations, to profitability, then they are a good leader, a good business person, a good decision maker, someone who can be and will be successful. So, showing them the steps the past experience, the past outcomes, the things that they have done that are provable to get from point A of nothing. They started a company from nothing. They've been running it from nothing. If the business started yesterday, you won't have many of these examples. If that business has been a year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, you have tons of examples of this business leader of the organization itself making changes necessary to be successful. You can show them what they've done in the past. You can explain to them. You can tell yourself you've been capable of making the changes in the past. Now, if the situation is not ideal, if the situation is not working out the way you want, if it's a setback, if it's a negative, if things are rough and hard right now, it just means things need to change and that you can adapt in order to make the change, in order to convert this negative, this low session, this valley, if you will, to a peak, to a high session, to an advantage for you if you're open-minded, if you understand the process, if you are going into it as a leader and not a dictator. So again, explain to others or explain to yourself. If either of you is feeling an imposter syndrome, if you feel like you're not capable, but you're there and you have to do it or else all is lost, tell yourself to stop thinking about being an imposter and instead focus on how you've done it in the past. Focus on the fact that you were able to do it in the past, that you were willing, that you have made past changes, that you have adapted to unexpected outcomes, that you have stepped up to the plate when necessary. You've put the work in, you put the effort in, you have done what was needed to get you to where you are today. And because our future success is only management of change, that's all you need to do now is focus on the management of change, and you can prove that you can overcome imposter syndrome by reflecting on past successes, past examples of you doing it successfully, of making the change necessary, of coming through hard times, of coming around negative outcomes, of doing things that were not necessarily in the plan, but were required by the situation. That ability to adapt, adjust, adopt, the capability that you've had in the past is now the building block for you to do it in the future. You can't be an imposter if you've done it before, even in a different way or even on a smaller scale. It's not about the past accomplishments. It's about the attitude, the open-mindedness, the thought process, the ability to swallow your ego and do what's necessary, the ability to take your boss hat off or owner hat off or person in charge hat off and put the person who wants to win, person who wants to be successful, the person who's willing to learn, the person who's willing to grow hat on, do what's necessary and move forward. You've done that in the past to be successful today. I guarantee you, no matter who you are, no matter how much success you've had in life, there are examples of you getting from 1% successful to 2% or 5% or 10% or 90% or 99%. Somewhere in there is an example or 2 or 7 of your ability to do that. Remember those things, reference those things, understand you're always going to be going through the process. Understand this isn't unique to you. Every business struggles at some point, sometimes in a year, sometimes in a quarter, sometimes in a week. Everyone has ups and downs. Everyone makes mistakes. It's not about making mistakes. It's not about trying to be perfect. It's about taking the mistakes, the unexpected outcomes, the negative scenarios, and learning from them so you can change and move forward in a better way. And those hard times, those negative outcomes, those unexpected actions will not continue to drag you down, but instead be the actual solution to how you move forward. If you understand that approach, if you understand the mindset, if you understand you need to do these things, then there's no possible way you're an imposter. Now, if the person you're talking to says, no, I'm not going to do it, I'm shut off to that, my way or the highway, well, they are in fact an imposter. You might as well call them out on it. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Saturday Morning Hustle podcast again this week. Make sure you listen each and every week on Anchor app, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Podchaser, YouTube, wherever you find great podcasts. Stream, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, share with a friend. I would appreciate it so much. Make sure you get your Saturday Morning Hustle, Entrepreneur AF, and Coffee and Donut swag as well, all at SaturdayMorningHustle.com. Follow on social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and the Facebook fan page as well. Don't miss an episode. Don't miss the swag. Info on all the past stuff. How to buy your own sweatshirt, hat, hoodie, all that. SaturdayMorningHustle.com again. SaturdayMorningHustle.com. Whenever you're not sure, SaturdayMorningHustle.com. Can't beat it. It's Saturday. I'm in the office. This is the Saturday Morning Hustle. You are not an imposter. You're just someone dealing with a problem, and that problem itself will present you the opportunity to be successful. Good luck, and we'll see you next week.